Burai Fighter's always had one of those covers that's just really cool. But what does it mean? Is this thing a Burai? It says here in this ad that I need to defeat the Burai using massive weaponry, which is sweet. Burai must mean cool-looking dragon or something, I guess. Let's look it up. In Japanese, the word Burai can refer to an outlaw or rogue, someone who lives outside of societal norms. Huh, well, I guess, I think the spicy space worm qualifies as one who lives outside of societal norms for sure. So, Burai Fighter is mostly an auto-scrolling shooter developed by Kid, a company that has quite a varied catalog of credits, including Kickmaster, Low G-Man, both NES G.I. Joes, Isolated Warrior, Rekka, and later on weird stuff like Pepsi Man. They ended up being best known for their Memories Off series, which are Japanese romance visual novel games that I have no experience with. Yet. How does this auto-scrolling multi-directional shooter hold up? Well, let's see. Now, when you start a new game of Burai Fighter, it asks you how hard you want it. Eagle is easiest, Albatross is medium, and Ace is most difficult. The harder modes make enemies more aggressive, faster, and harder to kill, but the game's endings are also different between each difficulty selection as well. There are a couple of different perspectives throughout. In 5 of the 7 levels, you will be controlling your fighter from a side view perspective, with your goal being to obviously survive the level and wipe out the boss at the end. In the other 2 levels, namely level 3 and level 6, you control your fighter from a top view perspective and have to seek out and destroy the base. Controlling the fighter in the side view levels feels natural. You can move in the opposite direction that you're aiming by holding B to lock your aim. This comes in handy when you need to scoot around the screen and retreat from projectiles while still firing on your target. If you let go of B, you will fire in the direction you're moving. You can move in 8 directions, and the movement feels fluid and responsive. I even broke out my NES Advantage for a spin, and it felt really natural to maneuver using that controller. I'd have to recommend it if you give this one a try, since 8 directions is a bit easier to do using the Advantage joystick over the 4 directional buttons of the D-pad. Your experience may vary. There are lots and lots of pickups in every level. The little red coins you find to go towards your overall points, which can lead to extra lives as well as your bombs. You can also just find extra life pickups on occasion. Now, the letters M, L, and R refer to your weaponry, which are missiles, lasers, and rings, respectively. Each one has 3 power levels, but you'll need to commit to a letter to get the most out of it. To get to the second power level, you need to pick up 5 of the same letter, and then 10 for power level 3. This can be tricky to do with all the on-screen chaos and the fact that the letters cycle through every couple of seconds, which means you may accidentally grab a power-up you didn't mean to, and that doesn't erase the total you've picked up since the last time you died, but it does change your active weapon to the last one you touched. And then there's an S letter pickup, which grants you a little more speed, always good in a game like this. Now, like many other shooters, you also have a limited bomb attack that wipes the screen momentarily. In this game, they're called cobalt bombs. If you gather enough of the red coins, the bar at the bottom ticks up, and the little white marks indicate how many of the cobalt bombs you have to use. The bombs work pretty well to save you from a pickle, but they have no effect on the bosses. There's also a rotating shield attack you can pick up that damages enemies that happen to get too close. The maneuverability feels good, and the weapon power-ups do make the game fun to play. Most of the enemies are fairly easy to wipe out, and the bosses are pretty straightforward to fight. Most look pretty cool, like this thing called a Fang Skull, and then of course the cover villain, aka the Slime Dragon. The hardest part of the game will be your fights with the auto-scrolling. The game is designed, deviously, to lead you into dead ends, which causes you to become trapped on the edge of the screen and killed. This happened to me time and time again. There are a few gnarly difficulty spikes throughout the game that will require some trying and dying to learn and master. Sometimes there's just too much on screen to process at once. And even though Burai Fighter doesn't shy away from throwing a ton of enemies on screen at once, along with waves of projectiles, the game's performance stays steady throughout. There's not a lot of flicker or slowdown, which I found to be pretty impressive. The game can certainly get tough, but outside of the auto-scrolling tricking you into killing yourself, the game feels fair and is rather forgiving as well. You start with 3 lives and you earn a password after each level. The levels are short and fairly contained, meaning a solid winning run of this one will take you less than 20 minutes. but will require some memorization and sharp reflexes on your part to survive it, especially on those greater difficulties. The music here is really solid. Now, there's not a lot of it, maybe just over 5 minutes total of different tunes that loop, but what's here is put together nicely and doesn't get old too quickly. Now, if you like story, this all takes place on a remote corner of the galaxy where a race of super brains, aka the Burai, have been waiting to conquer the universe for thousands of years. Now, to do this, they've been creating huge armies of robo-mutants to do their bidding, and it's up to you and your proton pack to wipe them out and take down the big bad slime dragon space worm menace, once and for all. Well, if you can't get enough Burai Fighter on the NES, you could always try the Game Boy version called Burai Fighter Deluxe. It's a port that works mostly the same, just with a zoomed-in perspective with the small screen real estate. If you want color with your handheld Burai Fighter, you could try Space Marauder on the Game Boy Color, which is the same port, just, in color, and with a different name. Overall, Burai Fighter is a fun time with challenging gameplay, varied enemy and bosses, and solid music and visuals for the NES. It's fun to play with a standard controller, or the NES Advantage, or on the Game Boy, or the Game Boy Color. But that's going to do it today for Burai Fighter on the NES. Now, as always, look out for the slimy space worms, and thanks for watching.